You are now watching The Beach.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a very special video. I am joined here by Noah, who is at Summitsphere, helping with the development of an up-and-coming indie game, Antonblast. This is very exciting.
Yes, indeed it is. It's very easy for me to talk about this game because I love it a lot, and it resonates a lot with me personally. Just a little bit about me. I was brought on to Summitsphere, but since then I've been overlooking production and also spearheading the marketing, running all the socials and everything. My public title is Studio Megaphone, so I've been helping out my boss Tony a lot with getting promos out, getting videos out of the game, and showcasing new stuff. And I think people are really excited, and it's exciting me a lot. So, yeah.
For those who don't know, Antonblast is a Kickstarter game, and it has been pitched to be a spiritual successor to Wario Land, but also has many other inspirations as well. So, for those who haven't seen it before, how exactly would you describe Antonblast? What kind of game is it?
So, Antonblast is a destruction platformer, an action platformer, where you play as Anton, the red guy, who has to get its spirit collection back because it was stolen by Satan, and he's just the angriest man ever. And so he's rushing through 12 levels, beating up bad guys, wrecking through everything, tearing down buildings, all sorts of stuff. And at the end of every level, you have a spirit timer. You hit that spirit timer, and the clock starts counting down, and you got to get back to the beginning of the level before everything blows up.
Wow, just gotta say,
Yeah.
It's a pretty intense concept for a 2D platformer where Satan steals a spirit collection, and he will do anything to retrieve him back. Nothing's gonna get in his way. But who exactly is Anton is the question. How would you describe him?
I would describe Anton as, he's a pretty grumpy dude. I mean, he lives in a really cruddy apartment with his roommate Annie, and Annie is pretty much the only person in the world who is able to tolerate him. He goes over to Brulo's casino all the time. Brulo's just the bartender there. He annoys the hell out of Brulo constantly. Nobody else seems to really like him that much. He's just kind of angry, a grump. And Satan really should not have stolen his spirits because that is one thing that he loves the most, and essentially is the instigator for the whole story and why Anton is on this mission to get them back and destroy everything, because he's so angry that nothing can get in his way. He will just wreck through everything.
Now this is a question from a fan. His name is Keygon John 1999. Now speaking of his prized spirit collection, does Anton regularly drink, or does he save it for special occasions?
So, as I mentioned, he does go to Brulo's casino often. He visits Brulo and annoys him, and he has a really, really high tab at Brulo's. So, maybe that doesn't answer your question exactly, but that's all I'll say on that matter, and Brulo is definitely not happy about that.
So it's more up to interpretation?
Yes, I would say that it is.
Now, when it comes to Antonblast, Wario Land was a big inspiration, but what was your biggest inspiration from Antonblast?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of Wario Land, it is very inspired by Wario Land 4, but also Virtual Boy Wario Land as well. That game has layer jumping, and so does Antonblast, and I think the layer jumps are a really big selling point for this game. It makes the levels really dynamic. It gives them a lot of flow, so you'll be jumping back and forth through these different levels. It also adds a lot of depth to the levels because you'll be, hopping back and forth through all these sections, and it makes the worlds feel more lived in. Like in Boiler City, for example, you'll see buildings in the background that you'll be able to jump on top of and scale and then back into the foreground. And so that's a big selling point. But yeah, it's fairly rooted in Wario Land for sure. But also Crash Bandicoot is a huge inspiration in terms of like how the levels flow, the sort of die again type of style of reaching a certain degree of progression in a level and then you die. But thankfully there are checkpoints everywhere, so you'll hit a checkpoint and then you'll revive at the checkpoint, and it's just kind of this repeating loop of going through these levels, running into interesting and different mechanics, fighting new enemies, and etc. Yeah, it is rooted in Wario Land, but there's a lot of other stuff there too.
Now, this is another game that was inspired by Wario Land, but it might be a common comparison, and that is another popular indie game being Pizza Tower. Now, with Pizza Tower, it is inspired by Wario Land, but is more of its own thing. It kind of feels like a Sonic game in a lot of ways, where the key is memorization, going through the levels as fast as possible, and with that, you gotta replay the levels a bunch of times to fully memorize them. And considering the Wario Land inspiration, many might just see Antonblast and Pizza Tower as similar, but what differentiates the two the most, you would say?
So I would say there really are some pretty core differences. Antonblast, you have health, you can die. There's the checkpoint system, which I just explained. But Antonblast is a game where you can really take your time if you want to in the beginning sections of each level. They're arranged in such a way where there's a lot of collectibles you can find, there's a lot of hidden nooks and crannies and things, and these levels are large as well, and there's a lot for players to really digest and to look for in these levels. You're not asked to rush through the whole time, and Anton's movement kit is a little bit different in that he has stuff like hammer bouncing and the atomic bomb, and his clutch boost mechanic is very different in that you'll be able to rack up speed, but you have to do it in a more precise way where your timing hits like it's a racing game clutch meter. So in terms of flow, I would say that yes, Pizza Tower it feels closer to a Sonic game in some ways than Wario. Of course, it is very rooted in Wario and its structure that we also have in terms of the runback system from Wario Land 4, but I would say in a game like Pizza Tower, you are being asked to move at fastest possible speed at all times, whereas in Antonblast and also in the original Wario Land 4, you can spend the front half of these levels kind of going more at your own pace. The level designs don't necessarily ask the player to rush through them, but we have a sort of Donkey Kong Country style philosophy where we will lay out these levels in such a way where we will allow the player to go through them really quickly if they're skilled enough and if they know the layouts well enough. But it's not necessarily something that we're making Anton do. You'll see us put out videos of Anton moving really quickly, and that's pretty high skill play, but just know that that's not required. Generally speaking, when Anton is rushing through the levels, it's really good at selling the game and getting people to go, ooh, look at this, look how fast he's going. But I wouldn't call Antonblast a speed game, and I would certainly say that it's fundamentally different from Pizza Tower in a lot of ways in that regard.
Yeah, I would say the two are very different games because I've been playing Pizza Tower when it released on the Switch, and it's a great game. I'm loving playing it. But it definitely doesn't feel much like Wario Land outside of, just the way Peppino is designed. It's kind of similar to Wario, and how some of the movement is reminiscent of it and the transformations. It definitely does feel like something just completely different. Where Antonblast, it definitely feels more like a spiritual successor to Wario Land. Like, that was the vibe I was getting from it, because for those who don't know, the last Wario Land we got was 10 years ago, or over a decade ago, on the Wii, being Wario Land Shake It in 2009. So there's been a lot of demand for a new Wario game, but in the meantime, Antonblast is doing a lot to just capture the magic of what made the Wario Land games so special in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak on that a ton personally. I need to play more of those games, but from what I've seen, it's kind of like Anton, in a way, is somewhat like a beefed up Wario, because in Wario Land 4, I know there's a lot of emphasis on the fact that Wario, he's not like Mario, he's slower, he's a bit more difficult to control in some situations, and you kind of use that to your advantage for puzzle solving, whereas Anton is a bit more casually approachable. He can move a lot faster. It's easier to get him to move quickly, but you're not asked to move him quickly necessarily. And so in that degree, I would say we are a success. We are evoking Wario Land for sure, but it's beyond just the successor, right? We're pulling in tons of other stuff as much as we can in terms of the other games that we're sourcing from, but also in our aesthetics and in our visuals and in our characters. It's really going to be its own thing.
Yeah, and that's the vibe I got from Antonblast. Playing through the game, it definitely has its own vibe to it, and a lot of that has to do with the presentation. Now it's going for a very unique art style. With a lot of indie games, they will go for the pixel style, but Antonblast is doing so in a way that's unique, it's fresh, and the way that it's going on is like, from what I've seen with the development, all the sprites are hand-drawn and then converted to sprites, which is super cool. But when it comes to the presentation, what are the main inspirations for that, and what are you going for? Because I really got the vibe that it feels like a modern Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, so that GBA aesthetic, we're really trying to evoke that, but GBA boosted, right? It's like GBA has a certain aesthetic to it, and a lot of those titles like Wario Land 4 and like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga can evoke sort of cartoony visuals, but are a bit limited by hardware, whereas we're going a step beyond and throwing in a ton of stuff that wouldn't have been possible on that console, but we are certainly trying to evoke that. In terms of like our actual style and how we render the environments and our characters, they have a lot of angularity to them, and there's a bit of an edge in the art style, I would say. We're really trying to evoke something like early 2000s, late 90s Cartoon Network, stuff like Billy and Mandy, stuff like Dexter's Lab, where it kind of is UPA adjacent, but it's a very saturated game. Our environments are very beautiful. We really wanted it to have an aesthetic to have the player feel like they're playing a cartoon as it's going along. Our characters are also fully voice acted, so you'll have a lot of moments where it's like, oh, this is almost a cinematic platformer in a way, but on the end of it being more goofy, kind of like fun sort of way, with these characters bouncing off each other and everything.
Yeah, it definitely feels like an interactive cartoon from what I was playing of the game. Like, it feels like you're actually playing through a cartoon with Anton's expressions and just how animated the game is. And this goes into another question. Why is Anton always pissed? He is not just angry. He is pissed off.
Yeah, he's, well, in this game's context in particular, Anton had his spirit collection stolen, which, as you may have guessed, is his favorite thing in the whole world, right? So the one thing that he cares about the very most gets taken away from him, and he has no motivation other than to get it back and beat the guy up who did this to him, because it's, I mean, what else can I say? The guy's just really upset that he got his spirits taken away. So that's essentially why he is so angry in this context.
Now, where is his apartment located?
Yes, that's a good question. His apartment is in Boiler City, which is the first level. Boiler City is really gross and kind of, it's pretty uninviting, but in terms of its aesthetics, it's very visually striking and very loud, and I think it leaves a pretty lasting first impression as you jump out of Anton's apartment and really get to experience that level.
Would you say that Boiler City would be worse to live in than the Motel 6?
Honestly, yeah, it's like it's like Miami on steroids. It's basically my boss Tony. He lives in Miami, and a lot of this game's visual style and language, and the environments, he's trying to take a lot of that from Miami culture. One of our proudest aesthetics, I think, is in our graffiti. Throughout these levels, you're going to be seeing different spreads of graffiti pasted on the walls and stuff. So it's a bit grungy, but there's still that cartoon like angularity to everything that really brings it together.
I gotta say, being a Florida native myself, definitely gives that Florida energy off, just the game itself. I've never been to Miami specifically, but having Antonblast kind of take inspiration from that, it's super cool. And it also makes sense why he's so angry.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like you're playing as the titular Florida man, right? In a way.
All he needs to do is have an alligator that he rides on in the game, like Mario does with Yoshi.
He has a shark that he rides on. There's this transformation called the sewer shark, where he hops on this guy in the sewer level and rides him around. That's actually a thing. So
And how
it's funny
many
you
of
mention
those
that.
would you say are in the game?
There's quite a few. Yeah. So Wario Land 4 is known for its transformations. Even Crash Bandicoot has similar like vehicles that Crash rides on, like Polar and stuff. So it evokes that. In many of our levels, you'll just suddenly get either transformed or put through a vehicle or whatever else, and they're all very different from each other and very fun. So you can look forward to seeing those when the game's out. But I am not gonna spill too many details about them. That is up for the players to experience for themselves.
I'm looking forward to it. Now, the first time I ever played Antonblast was at PAX East, where I got to meet Tony. And I also played it at PAX West, where I met you. And with the demo itself, the level I played, I believe, was Cinnamon Springs, where there were the waterfalls. And it was a very long level. But with Antonblast specifically, what would you say the level design is like? What could you compare it to the most? How long are the levels, and how many are there?
Yeah, so we've got 12 levels. In terms of length, I would say, yeah, it's closer to Wario Land 4, where that game also has a somewhat shorter stage count overall, but they're considerable in their length. They're not Mario-sized. Those levels tend to be very small. Each stage has very distinct visual style, so you're going to different locales, like Boiler City, for example. I would say we're really trying to strike a balance between just right amount of length, where we don't want it to be too long to where a player kind of gets exhausted and wants to move on, but we also don't want them to be too short, because we understand that players really can get immersed in these different levels and these different worlds that we take Anton through. So I would say, in terms of comparing it to previous games, something like the Wario Land games, like those levels tend to be on the longer side. I would say that it's closer to those.
Right. And with the level design specifically, how many collectibles are in the levels? Because Wario Land, you have the treasure and also the CDs in Wario Land 4. Like, there are 4 pieces of the treasure, but also the CDs you could collect.
Yeah, right. So in each level you have the spirit, which is mandatory to collect. You'll always end up collecting the spirit no matter what. It's on the main path. So there's the spirit, but there's also a couple of others, and I won't go too into detail on those. I'll say one of them is a cassette, which is very similar to the CDs from Wario Land 4. If you find a cassette in the level, you'll collect it, you'll add it to your essentially cassette tape collection, and you'll be able to go into a menu and play whatever is on that cassette. I will say the whatever ends up playing on those cassettes is I don't think you're gonna be able to really predict accurately what will be on them. Just that's all I'll say on that. But just I think they'll be fairly worth collecting, because you never know what's gonna be on that tape.
It's going to be pretty fun collecting all the cassette tapes and such. Now, are there costumes or anything like that?
Yeah, we do have another one of the collectibles in the game is a spray can, and when you collect that, it instantly changes your palette. So that's another collectible that you can find throughout the levels, just kind of in optional sections or the hidden little things. We try to have a lot of fun with those. I think it adds a lot of value and a lot of drive for the player to actually reach out and look for these. That's not even all of them either. I won't go into too much detail, but there are other collectibles as well with varying degrees of secrecy. So you'll have to really comb through these levels in and out to find everything.
Now, how long would you say the game is for an average playthrough, and how long would it be for 100%?
That's a really tough question. I definitely want to say platformers tend to be on the shorter side, and I would say the same is true for this one. We've got all these collectibles to get, so that'll add to it for sure. We've got bosses, which will definitely add it. In terms of 100% completion, Oh man, there's so much that you can do. You'll see that there's really a lot there that'll bring players back.
Yeah, when it comes to platformers, replay value is very important to have. But considering
Absolutely.
how many collectibles there are and the way the levels are designed, there is a lot going for Anton Blast in terms of level design. And from what I've played, I was very happy with it. I gotta say, easily the highlight of PAX East. And I would
Oh,
also
thank you.
say a huge highlight of PAX West as well. Now, there's another Anton game, for those who might not know, and this is the predecessor to Anton Blast, and that is Anton Ball Deluxe.
That's
What
right. Yeah.
inspired you guys to release Anton Ball Deluxe first, considering that Anton Blast is like the showpiece? It's the big debut of Anton, even though there was a predecessor before. Like, this is
Yeah.
going to be the big one.
Yeah, so Anton Blast, games of this scale, they're ambitious, they're big, and there's a lot to put into games like this to get them made. And so with Anton Ball Deluxe, I wasn't with the studio yet. This is several years ago now, but with that game, I think they really wanted to have something smaller scale. Tony just wanted to make something that was evocative of Game Boy Advance stuff, like a blend between Wario Land 4 and Mario Brothers on GBA. And I think we ended up doing that one first to really get a base for ourselves. It's good to have a release out, as a studio earlier on, even if it's a smaller project. I think generally speaking, in terms of indie projects, it's quite good to start small and just sort of build experience from there, because you will need it with these bigger games, and when you'll overcome hurdles working on bigger projects and learn a lot from the smaller ones. So I think that's essentially why we started with that. What I'll say about Anton Ball Deluxe in terms of our characters and everything, really the Anton Blast version of our characters and our environments is more of the definitive iteration of them. Anton Ball Deluxe, you'll see Anton and Annie and some other characters in that game, but they're almost in an earlier state, right? We hadn't fully explored them as characters yet. So I think it'll be interesting for people to look on that game as a sort of stepping stone. And Anton Blast will have homages to it and little hints to it that players might find fun if they've played Anton Ball Deluxe before. So I can look forward to that.
Would you say there are a lot of references to other games and Easter eggs in Anton Blast?
I will say, okay, in the first level of Boiler City, there's a graffiti that looks like a certain Bandicoot. I won't say it is him, but it looks like him. And once it's pretty obvious, like you'll be able to see it pretty easily. So if and some of the graffiti or some of the visuals, you might see stuff as like, oh wait, that reminds me of that. And there's quite a bit of that. There's some degrees of like obviousness. Sometimes we more subtly kind of like allude to something from another game. But I think in terms of like direct references, there aren't too many of those. But yeah, that's my answer for that.
And I remember we were talking about how Virtual Boy Wario Land is a big inspiration for the game, in addition to Wario Land 4. So,
Yes.
with that being said, are there going to be any homages to the Virtual Boy?
Actually, yeah, we do have references to that. Thank you for asking. We've got red rooms in each of the levels. They're another secret to come across. Not exactly obvious to get into them. But yes, we have red rooms where you'll go into this room and suddenly the entire palette completely shifts to evoke that of a Virtual Boy game. And I think it's a really cool homage. My boss, Tony, is a really big fan of the Virtual Boy's aesthetics and that kind of era of Nintendo. I know that Nintendo has been particularly shameful of the Virtual Boy. He just thinks it's really cool. So,
I feel the same way.
Yeah, I don't think there are many games that are really celebrating the Virtual Boy in this way, so I think it's special for doing that.
Now, usually when it comes to Virtual Boy in games and references, it's, oh wow, the Virtual Boy failed. Like, it's a meme in
Yep.
Tomodachi Life, all hail the Virtual Boy. Or the Virtual Boo in Luigi's Mansion 3. But actually
Yes,
seeing a
exactly.
homage to it in Anton Blast is super cool. Have you played a Virtual Boy before?
I've not. I watched Tony play through an emulated version of Virtual Boy Wario Land, and I know that is like the crowning jewel of the console, and that game looks really great. But no, I've not actually looked through a Virtual Boy console myself ever. I should probably add that to my bucket list.
It definitely is something you gotta try at least once. Getting one yourself, I'm not sure if I would say that's a great idea, considering that Virtual Boy Wario Land's really the only game that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you got other games that are decent, but who needs Teleroboxer? I mean, that one's actually kind of good.
Her Jack Bros is good, right?
Yeah, but is it $1,000 good?
It's
pricey to
rather
get into.
simulate it.
Well, you can actually get Virtual Boy games on the 3DS. If you have a modded 3DS, you can actually play Virtual Boy games on it.
That's
So
sick.
that is really cool. In 3D as well. Now, speaking of, like, 3DS and handhelds, this is a question from Aqua Twist. Have you considered an Antonblast Game Boy Advance port?
So that does sound really cool, but the thing is with Antonblast and sort of the fidelity of it is, it's like I said earlier, I believe it's GBA aesthetics but boosted a ton. So I'm really not sure if we would be able to fit all of that on a GBA cartridge. If we were to do that, then it would probably scale down some things, but no promises. It's a cool idea, but I think Anton Blast really only could be made today. It has so many things that are just, it reaches beyond the scale of what the GBA would be able to put out. So.
Oh, for sure. It would be a cool novelty seeing it on the Game Boy Advance. Now, another question that I have about the presentation is it's based on cartoons and such, but with the Game Boy Advance aesthetic, how are you guys able to replicate it so well? Because it essentially is an amped up Game Boy Advance game. Like, what exactly was the process of getting it to look very similar to the aesthetic of a Game Boy Advance game?
Yeah, so I think one thing that my boss as art director emphasizes a lot is making everything have really high saturation. It's a very colorful game, a very beautiful game. I think that really helps sell the cartoon aesthetic of it. In terms of the sprites looking as good as they do and as fluid as they do, that is thanks to a process where for our character animations, we have them drawn at a higher resolution, and we have another artist come in and scale them down so they all read very well. A similar process was used for Earthworm Jim in the 90s, where the character was fully traditionally animated before being processed down into sprites.
Wow, that's a pretty impressive process right there. And I can definitely see that there's a lot of care put into the animations and such.
The game will open with a fully animated cutscene where you'll get to meet Anton and Annie and Satan especially. There's a lot of emphasis on Satan. You'll get a very good first impression of him and what he's all about. Satan is a very vain man, and he's very upset about the fact that Anton is redder than he is. So in that opening cutscene, you'll see him rant a bit and be upset and essentially send his minions to take away Anton's spirit collection. And so that will open the game, and you'll see some other bits here and there throughout the game that are animated, and you'll see these characters interact with each other as if you're watching a cartoon, all fully voice acted.
That is a very exciting prospect, because a lot of 2D platformers won't have that. But, you know, the gist I'm getting from the game is it's like playing a cartoon. Now, one of my favorite games of all time, Conker's Bad Fur Day, could be seen as kind of similar. It is an edgy cartoon, something along the lines of South Park, but still,
yeah,
playing through it, it just feels like you're actually playing through a cartoon and not just a game. Would you say the same about Antonblast?
Yeah, I would. I would say that Conker's Bad Fur Day is a great kind of reference point. Not one that we necessarily drew from as developers, but in terms of comparison, that game has a lot of moments where you're playing as the main character who is just meeting other characters in his world, talking to the villains as well, and just in between gameplay moments, you have a lot of dialogue and things of that nature. So I think it's a good reference point. I will say, though, the humor of our game may lean on that kind of 90s edge, but we're not an M-rated game. We're a teen-rated game, so you can expect that kind of degree of humor and maturity in it. It's a very silly game, but it's only occasionally crude. But I think if you watch Beavis and Butthead, it's about what you get from there. There's some degrees of comedy. It's I would say it's a very funny game. That's obviously up to interpretation. Comedy is subjective, but in terms of my taste, I would say it's very leaning comedy.
How crude would you say Anton is?
I would say it's tough to evaluate it wholesale. I think there are moments where you'll be like, "Oh man, what was he talking about? What did he just say?" But I think on the whole, it's like, yeah, we're sticking to our T rating pretty close there. I mean, it's essentially like you're watching a '90s cartoon, and what you would expect to see in a '90s cartoon, you'll probably get in this.
When I was playing Pizza Tower, there were moments that surprised me with how crude that game could be. Like one of the bosses, the noise, he flips you off. And then there was a level called Oh Shit. And that just surprised the heck out of me, where that was included in the game. Like, I was not expecting that.
I think what that game has a lot of moments that I think are played for shock. Not just with that kind of thing, but also it's with this game, I think to speaking on the humor, there's a bit more consistency in terms of like, oh, this is how the characters talk. This is kind of the degree, or like these are the words that we're using, so to speak. Where when Pizza Tower was being made, it was just kind of like, oh, what if they did this in this moment? We also have that thought process sometimes where it's just like, oh, it would be funny if this character said this, but we're going about it specifically under the pretense of our rating. So it's, I know that Pizza Tower is also drawing from that kind of 90s cartoons influence, but they're not exactly the same, no.
Yeah, that is insightful to bring up, that you guys are trying to stick to the rating, but still, I definitely get a different vibe from Antonblast compared to anything else that I've played. Pizza Tower, like I said before, Wario Land, what's its main draw? What is the main thing that makes Antonblast unique?
Oh, yes. So Antonblast, I would say the main thing that makes it unique is it has very heavy emphasis on destruction in particular, which I'm not seeing too much nowadays, and especially not in 2D platformers. The cartoon aesthetic also, really the worlds and just the different settings and environments of these levels. I think the moment-to-moment gameplay really speaks for itself. It's really fun. There's great flow to it. I think that's really what stands out. And what I haven't been able to talk about as much here is the boss fights. I think the boss fights are a major selling point. We have Jewel Ghoul and Freako Dragon are great examples of bosses that are a lot larger in scale than what you might expect from a lot of other 2D platformers, and they're structured more like an action game boss fight where they have periods of vulnerability where you'll chip away at their health and they have a ton of health, but you're able to get a ton of hits in, and it's really satisfying to fight these bosses. And there's a lot of variety between them as well, and so I think that's another thing that will set this game apart and excite people is these boss encounters.
Are there any plans to bring it to other platformers like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S?
Stay tuned on that. I can't say any specifics about platforms of choice, but we are looking into it, so stay tuned.
Will it be coming to the Wii U and the Virtual Boy and the Nokia N-Gage anytime soon?
No. The Nokia one is so funny to me.
Have you seen it before?
I don't even think I might have seen it a long time ago. Oh, it's like a flip phone, right? There's a screen on it.
It's a little handheld, and it's shaped like a taco. It got the nickname the Taco Phone, but it.
Oh, I think I have seen that. Oh my god, it's so small, right? You have to hold it like this. It's like.
I think so.
Oh,
it didn't do very well, but I'm assuming that the resources, you could have some resources go to that if there's anything left over instead of the GBA port. Considering that,
we'll see. Yeah. We'll see about that.
Yeah, I'm not very confident that's going to happen, but I'm looking forward to potential multi-platform releases. And this brings me into the final question. Is there any consideration for DLC?
yeah, I will also say stay tuned about that. Of course, we have plans. We're considering a lot of options here, but best I can say about that is if you want to see more of Anton Blast, if you want to see DLC, that'll raise the chances of us continuing to support not just Anton Blast, but the series and future projects.
Yeah, that is very exciting to know that it could potentially happen. This has been an honor, Noah, to interview you. Great to know
Thank
about
you.
the development of the game, just a little bit of insight into it. Make sure to check out Anton Blast. Noah, do you have any socials you'd like us to follow? A YouTube channel you want us to subscribe to?
Oh yeah. So Summitsphere on all socials. Just that's where we're posting. So you can expect updates from there. You can also expect some occasional wacky business. You know, the usual. You follow us, our socials, and it'll all make sense. You just follow every single one, and yeah, and you'll be good. Yeah, Summitsphere and everything.
Sounds good to me. Well, anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and keep calm and da-don.